Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. Happy to be here with y'all. My name is Dustin Evatt. I'm the Associate Director in the Shelton Leadership Center, overseeing our academic programs, research, and assessment for our center. And Annika, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. My name is Annaka Sikkink, and I'm the Assistant Director for Scholars and Special Programs within the Shelton Leadership Center. And I teach our SLC 250 course, which is Critical and Creative Decision Making. It is one of the foundation courses for our two leadership minors, our Cross-Disciplinary Perspectives on Leadership and our Global Leadership minor.
Very cool. And so part of what our center focuses on, if you're not familiar with our center, kind of a quick high-level overview, as Annika said, we offer a variety of academic courses under University College. Typically, each semester we have between 5 and 8 academic courses that we teach, focused around leadership, education, and development. And as Annika mentioned, she teaches the SLC 250 course. We also teach some graduate level course and first year experience courses. So kind of a wide variety of leadership courses across the university. We also have the other side of our house, our center oversees co-curricular programs. So thinking about leadership education programs. Annika oversees our Shelton Scholars Program, kind of cohort-based leadership development program. And we also have the Chancellor's Leadership Development Program, as well as the Shelton Challenge, which is for high schoolers. So a good variety, both curricular and co-curricular offerings that, related to leadership. Our grant focused around, again, values-based leadership and the idea before you can lead others, you have to understand yourself first. And when we think about our academic courses that we offer across all of our courses, really one of the first things we start with early on in each semester is values exploration. So who am I? Who am I in relation to others? And part of that experience is diving into our personal values, our identities, our beliefs, our backgrounds, and lived experiences. And so kind of the why of this, of why we chose to pursue this grant in particular was in previous semesters, we've had a values exploration activity that's been embedded in most of our courses. But as you can imagine, a values exploration activity often has been a paper and pencil type of activity. And so we've carved out classroom time to say, okay, everyone, here's a list of 40 or 50 values. And now I'll spend, the next few minutes thinking about how do you narrow down your list, and start to identify your core values. And so thinking about a value sort activity. So one of the things we started to talk about in our center is how do we make this more interactive and keeping with the essence and the pedagogy of our teaching related to experiential learning, making sure that I was hands-on and interactive in the process. And so one of the things we started to explore with this grant was how do we turn this into a digital space, and also think about a flipped classroom experience. So rather than spending 30 minutes or so just having students 30 or 40 minutes having them identify or narrow down their values, how do we create an online tool or digital tool where they can do that outside of the classroom? It can be more reflective experience for them on a personal level. And that way, when they come back to the classroom, that's where we want to have more conversation and dialogue around the why. Why is it that you selected these values, and how does that impact your own reflection as a leader, and how can you make meaning of your own values in relation to other people? And so that was really the why of trying to explore, how can we make this a digital tool? And we were really fortunate with this Delta grant to be able to explore a couple options. Annika's going to kind of demo some of that for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will start here. Actually, before we get to that, I'll show you this. So this is kind of what the paper and pencil activity used to look like in one of our programs. And one of the things that we also got the opportunity to do with this grant and kind of putting some focused attention on this issue is we discovered that since values-based leadership is core to what we do, pretty much all of our curricular and co-curricular programs had some kind of values exploration activity, but it often wasn't the same one. And we often weren't using the same lists of values. And we had a lot of inconsistency across the center. So aside from the technology piece, this grant opportunity also helped us just conceptually come together and create some greater consistency so that students can experience more or less the same kind of foundation experience across all of our different courses. But this is an example of what it used to look like. So you can see here there's a somewhat overwhelming list of words, and students were asked to go through this and mark each one what was most important, what was least important, and then they could go through the list and narrow it down from there and continue to think about their definitions and so on and so forth. So not very dynamic, took a lot of classroom time, and tended to be somewhat overwhelming for students. So where we went with this, first of all, was, as I mentioned, we did some work and came up with a more core list of values. We actually did use some AI tools for this. So speaking of AI, is we took all of the different lists that we could find in different activities that we had used around the center, and then some other things that we sourced online, and looked for the values that were common across all of those lists, and then did some adjustments with AI's help, and then did some adjustments based on priorities for our own center and feedback from our staff. So we ended up coming up with a list of 48 values that we felt were pretty representative of the spectrum that we see from our students, and also related concepts that might help people expand their ideas and definitions of each of those values even further. Then we wanted to figure out what to do with that. So our goal was to identify a tool that would allow students to dynamically engage with this list and be moving things around and sorting them so that we still get to that same result of you have your most important, your important, and your least important values, but something that was a little bit more interactive than simply just noting on a page. We explored, as Carrie mentioned, kind of a number of different tools with Eling and Jakia's help and guidance and patience, a lot of that. So we started by looking at some whiteboarding tools. You may be familiar with Zoom Whiteboard, and that was one of the things that we considered was, could we use a whiteboarding tool that would allow us to create sticky notes, and then users could move the sticky notes to different areas on the page and things like that. We also explored another whiteboarding tool called Miro, which we really liked the look of Miro. We felt like it was a very clean interface, but we did encounter some challenges with that. That is not currently an enterprise tool at NC State, so it didn't have any integrations with Moodle. And basically what we would have had to do was create a template for this activity and then walk students through A, creating a Miro account, and then B, copying the template, and then they could actually get to doing the activity. So there's just a lot of friction there, a lot of background steps that students would have needed to do in order to be able to actually get to the platform where they're doing the activity. So despite the fact that it was a really pretty tool, and we had an opportunity to meet with some of their sales folks and learn about it in depth, we ended up deciding that that was not the route that we were going to go. So what we did land on is we are using H5P. And the reasons that we settled on that were that it is fully integrated within Moodle. So it's pretty seamless for students to be able to get immediately into the activity and start playing with it. It also gives us options within Moodle where the H5P activity can be embedded within a page or a book in Moodle, so we can have other content that gives instructions or context before they actually get to the activity itself. And I'll demo in a moment what that is currently looking like. We have a beta version at this point. And one of the things that we also liked about that, as well, actually, I don't know if we mentioned this, but in addition to the work that we do with NC State students and high school students, we also often do training with outside partners as well. So sometimes we will do work with corporations or other partners that are not NC State affiliated. So one of the things we liked about H5P is that there was the possibility that we might be able to create an activity and then potentially export it out of a Moodle space and host it in a website so that we could possibly use it with people who do not have NC State affiliation and wouldn't want to create Moodle accounts and all of that. So it gave us the flexibility to really build something that potentially had wide uses across multiple different parts of our work within the Shelton Leadership Center. So I'll show you what it looks like right now. So at this point, this is what we have built. So we put those 48 different values here into a drag and drop activity. And then we created 3 drop zones for most important, important, and least important. And the instructions for students would be simply that they take these values and they can put them in the different categories. And then right now we're still building this out. There's a couple of things that we want to do. First of all, with some just graphic design, this gives us the option to put a background image, which we have not yet done, but we intend to do because that would allow us to add some branding for our center, but also just to make it a more visually compelling experience than it is right now, but the functionality would stay the same. And the other thing that we have done is we have embedded this within an NC State book. So for example, the overall user experiences, we could start out with some information that's just background information. What are values? We're exploring a couple of different possibilities for how we could help students learn more about what the values are. So one idea is that we could have something text-based, but playing around with using the glossary tool within Moodle, which would give students access to learn a little bit more information about each of the values. Another alternative might be another H5P activity, which are dialogue cards, which would allow students to explore each of those 48 values in a little bit more detail, think about some of those related concepts and reflect on that before they have to do the interactive sort. Then we have the sorting activity that we were just looking at. And then finally, from that, they will work on prioritizing their values. So they'll look at everything that they put in that most important category and narrow it down to their top 3 to 5. So I have another H5P activity, which is a fill in the blank, which allows them to put in the top ones that they have selected. So this, with the flipped classroom approach that Dustin mentioned earlier, this will allow students to do a lot of this work. They can take as much time as they want to reflect and chew on it, or they can fly through it if that's what they're inclined to do. But it will not require a ton of classroom time, so that when they get to class, we can really do deeper level reflection on what are the implications of these core values. We do a lot of team-based work so that they can learn about the values of their team members and think about how those values align and what they can do to learn more about one another when they're working in team spaces. So I'll turn it back to Dustin for a brief wrap up.
Thanks, Annaka. So yeah, I think a lot of really great time and energy spent. Annaka, thank you, because Annaka has done a great job of building out a lot of this. And our intention, or kind of our next steps with this, is, as Annaka mentioned, is to build this out a little bit more branding to make it look more visually appealing to students. We are planning to test this here in May. I'm teaching a course, study abroad course in May that'll be more online format. Going there, and then but students will be able to fill it out online before coming to the study abroad experience. So we're going to test that out with a small group of students. Our hope and intent is to roll this out more holistically in the fall semester, especially with our 2 sections of SLC 250. And then also hope the goal again is to expand this to more courses. So we teach an SLC course on leadership and negotiation. So this would be an excellent activity for them to reflect on their values, how that shows up in their relation to positionality and negotiation. So lots of cool things we're excited about. And as Annaka mentioned, really cool opportunities, not only stay in the academic space, but also transfer this over to the co-curricular space and beyond NC State to more public audiences. So really, again, grateful for the opportunity in this DELTA grant.